Hello everyone, welcome to the next deck profile from me, Checkabilly. I'm obviously not on camera because my camera's out of action for the time being. That's one of the reasons I haven't uploaded many videos recently, but there's another one in the post. So yeah, it's coming down the way. Anyway, yeah, so this is my Maelstrom deck, which is what I ran at the Athena Games store celebration event. There was a turnout of, I believe, exactly 16 players. It's either 16 or 14. Either way, I came 11th, so it's nothing to write home about. But it does use a fairly consistent package, and the number one placement actually was the only other mono water. So that's kind of funny. And it's, yeah, it was just a really, I mean, this was relatively consistent. The one problem is that it's a bit too weak and doesn't really have a win con per se. But given the low amount of backups, really low amount of backups, and I mean, you've got loads of draw because it's Vikings, right? But it was just weirdly consistent, and it did a lot of work a lot of time. And there's lots of cards that don't get played very often, but actually they were, you know, they were pulling their weight. So it was a lot of fun to run, even though most of the time I didn't win my turns. It still did pretty decently considering it's a relatively weak package. Anyway, I'll start with limit breaks, backups, summons, and then move on to the forwards. So limit breaks were mono water, so Leo, Tidus, and a little Leela. Pretty much all you need. I don't think there's anything to necessarily write home about, other than that Tidus's effect, obviously you need 8 or more forwards or backups, and getting to 8 or more, whilst there are many backups, like I said, it was actually quite consistent, and with Vikings, you can go wide pretty quickly, so actually that was not too hard, and I did use Tidus's effect a couple of times. It's also worth noting, like, the reason I built this deck. So I wanted to kind of counteract the likes of Seven Wall and kind of multicolor, Kirin, that style deck, Walls as well, Warriors. So I wanted to kind of focus on a deck that could also just vomit out forwards onto the field, but not just like standard good ones, I guess is the way to put it. Is I didn't want to just load it up with legends and just be like, look, I won, without even having to really think about the deck. But at the same time, I also wanted to be able to counter the likes of, you know, a turn 1 7 wall or something like that, using the Leviathan to be able to cancel the entry effect. So there are a few reasons why I did this. I also got to use Darkness Manifest as well, who is, you know, a pretty decent card, who's kind of makes up for the fact that the Vikings don't really have that much success when getting through. But anyway, yeah, so I going on a tangent now. So backups. 3 unit because you want these guys to be cheaper. Anima for 2 CP is fantastic because with 4 backups you can use Anima twice and get a card from it both times. Obviously your opponent draws, but you get to draw as well. So make it so, I mean, just paying 2 to remove something is fantastic alone, but the fact that you also get the card off it as well, just so good. Lena to be able to revive. So actually this is probably one of the cards I would have taken out had I have had much chance to playtest this first. So obviously your opponent using the EX Burst draw card's nice, but the real reason I put it in was for the raise effect. However, when you look at the forwards that she can be bringing out, you've obviously got Viking, Van, Viking, Layla, and that's pretty much it. The Vikings themselves, you don't really necessarily want to be replaying unless you've got lots of either cards in the deck or Vikings in the deck. Layla was quite nice because if you can play her back onto the field to be able to then attack with a forward to make something lose 1,000 power, or obviously get that search off to go find your other BK or something like that, then it is decent. But there wasn't really ever a time where the raise was appropriate. Maybe I just, you know, I mean, I played a fair amount of games, to be fair. Most of my games went to 3 rounds. But yeah, it's just a case of I never really used her effect. Not to say that it's bad. It's just a case of, you know, maybe replace it with something. What, I don't know, but it wasn't doing that much work for me, to be honest. Loporet, so obviously got 2 Astrologian, 2 Loporet. And that realistically is the reason that I was able to just get to 5 backups, I think, pretty quickly. Obviously, this deck, it's Vikings, it turbo draws, right? So you're going to be finding your backups there as well. But 9 times out of 10, I wasn't really having to overpay. I wasn't having to pay for like too many Vikings from hand. I was actually getting the backups down. And obviously you've got a Sarah, which can search a Lena as well. Lena is the only target, but the real reason, to be honest, was Sarah into Lena. If I've already got Lena, I can at least get a Lena S, which is perfectly fine. It also searches, I believe... Where have you gone? No, maybe not. Oh, never mind. I thought Faris might have been a princess as well. But yeah, so... Lena is quite literally the only search target. So, yeah, you could obviously switch that out for anything else, and it would probably be fine. I mean, going for the Princess Sarah, so that, you know, the 1 CP light backup, which you can make into water, and then can buffer your water forwards as well, which is quite good. So, you know, you've got your options there. But Loporrit and Astrologian, I mean, I don't have to really say much more about them other than the fact that they're fantastic cards. They get you good cards to hand. I think Loporrit's the stronger of the two, because drawing 2 and then placing 1 card at the bottom of your deck is really, really strong, because you get to, you know, just change 2 cards in your hand. Astrologian, you get to look at the top 3, and you do get to put 1 at the top, but unless you're stacking like some sort of EX there, or, you know, you're comboing that top card with then a draw, it's a lot more situational. I'd say arguably it can be stronger in the right situation, but those situations happen less frequently, so I prefer Loporrit over the 2. And then, yeah, Sarah. Summons, I've already gone over this, but this Leviathan I like to put into the deck for the main reason that cancelling an action ability is often hilarious. And with Vikings as well, you can be fairly easily board wiped through summons. So, you know, your opponent plays a Hecaton or a Salamander, something like that. Leviathan to make so they don't take damage from any of the summons, or an action ability cancel it. Using this, for example, on like, I don't know, a fully charged, what's she called? Not Fiona. Although that would be hilarious on Fiona because that's expensive. Chocolate, sorry. Yeah, so Chocolate can draw a card, making so they don't get that effect. So they don't get an every reactivation. I'm focusing mostly on wind here, you can see why. But yeah, I think having this one of, and ultimately to be able to choose a forward return to his own hand, but 2 CP is pretty good, and does work with Darkness Manifest. So obviously, when when Darkness Manifest leaves the field, choose one character, break it. So that does apply to you bouncing it. So yeah, paying 2 to bounce your Darkness Manifest to break something is quite funny. Then you got 3 of this Leviathan, like I already said, is to be able to cancel entry effects and autos, so making it so that your opponent tries to border up the Shantoto, something like that, stopping that. Although I am stating that this is the forward Shantoto, so the Limb Break Shantoto. Obviously, Leviathan only cancels autos from forwards, not from backups, so the backup Shantoto would still get the board wipe. But either way, the prime reason it's in here is to stop Kirin and Wall, Faris, or I've forgotten her name now, not Lena, the other water warrior of light who's cracked. Raffia, that's one. And then, yeah, 7 Wall as well. So, yeah, to be able to cancel those effects is quite nice. Anima, because it's Anima, you get to remove stuff, which is just super useful. And then this Leviathan, because 1, it's EX, 2, it has 2 effects. Bounce something, putting light or dark to the top or bottom. There's lots of light and dark, so hypothetically, if your opponent's got, you know, 7 Wall and some other things on the field, put 7 Wall to the top of their deck if you can actually hit them for a point of damage this turn. And then also being able to, I don't know, bounce something like Axstar back to the hand. Not that you really want that re-entering, but you know what I mean. And then obviously recursion through the summon as well is really, really nice. What's also quite funny is that when Darkness Manifest triggers at the beginning of your main phase during each, at the beginning of your main phase during each of your turns, Darkness Manifest deals your opponent 1 point of damage. That's triggers at the beginning of your main phase 1, so it goes on the stack. You can then stack Leviathan to put a light or dark card on top of your opponent's deck to make it so that is the point of damage. So unless they can cancel the Leviathan or stop the Darkness Manifest, that is basically going to be impossible to get to. Right, that is the summons. Now moving on to the forwards. Now there are 29 forwards in total, so it's pretty heavily stacked, but it's Vikings, right? So enters the field, draw a card. Enters the field, reveal top 5, play a card named Viking of 3 or less. Bear in mind that it is a card named Viking. It does not play a job pirate onto the field, so you cannot play Layla off of this card. It can only be one of the little standard unit Vikings. Varn, really, really good card. When Varn enters the field, choose 1 forward opponent controls. If you control 3 or more job pirate and or card named Viking, it loses 8,000 power to the end of the turn. If it 8,000 power doesn't kill it, then potentially an attack with Layla on the field will kill it. So yeah, Varn did a lot of work in my opinion, and he was actually the best target for Lena when using her S ability, to be able to just, you know, Viking into Viking, Varn or Lena S to bring out Varn to then minus 8k something. Super powerful. So yeah, really powerful card. I really liked it. It's a weenie, but if you've got BK on the field, not BK, sorry, Faris, then it's not too bad. Viking, draw a card upon entry, and leaving as well. Reminder that leaving means literally any reason it leaves the field, so remove from game, bounce back to your hand, whatever, back on top of your deck, you get to draw a card. Layla, so surprisingly actually, being able to get the minus 1,000 power every time a waterfall attacks was really useful. Like I mentioned earlier, using Varn was pretty effective, but just being able to use it alongside the likes of Jed, where your forwards also take 1,000 less damage, means that you've got a 2k swing in your power. So yeah, really good. I actually think because of the Darkness Manifest bounce effect as well, and then using something like Layla, there might be some calls for having the Water 2CP Bismarck summon in this deck. It would become a 1CP with Yuna, which is really good. But then getting to bounce any of your characters back to your hand for 1CP is really good. And then being able to half something's power and then a Layla attack potentially. You know, it just means that you, for an extra 1CP, technically 3 if you include the card in your hand, to almost guarantee that you're going to kill something might be worth it. And then, yeah, searching as well. There are so many good search targets. 9 times out of 10, though, it would search the BK or the Faris to make it so that your forwards are either big or hard to kill. And then, obviously, I've got this Layla in the deck as well, and even though there's 2 of each, I never found that they were competing for the same spot. 9 times out of 10, this Layla would get played early. If she did, you know, she'd die, more Vikings would enter the field at some point, but having this Layla ready to go, even off turn 1 as well, was super useful. So they weren't there wasn't really any points where I had one and wanted the other, and even if you did, you got means of bouncing them back to your hand anyway to then replay the other one if you wanted to. Jed, really good card. So if a water forward or a category soft foe forward you control is dealt damage is reduced by 1,000. So that obviously applies to all the water forwards, but also Darkness Manifest, who is a 9k. So it means your opponent has to be dealing 10k to this dude to be able to kill him. And then obviously when he enters the field, choose one forward opponent controls. If there are 2 or more category soft foe forwards, put it on top of his owner's deck. So soft foe forwards, you have Jed, you have Darkness Manifest, you've got BK, obviously fits nicely into the deck. But then I've also got a one of Kraken as well. So you have 3 opportunities to be able to trigger Jed's entry effect. And, you know, putting something on top of your deck is really useful. And Jed counts himself as one of those 2 forwards, so you're probably going to be putting something there. Yeah, again, this card really good. Did a lot of heavy lifting. BK, you don't need to say much more of him. The fact that he's a free Viking/pirate. That makes it so that your forwards don't deal damage from abilities. Now, obviously, the summons kind of suck, but, you know, ultimately being able to... I've just realised something. I've been talking about this, and it's an old deck version. It hasn't saved the change I made? That's weird. Anyway, I'll talk about BK, then I'll talk about the change I made. So yeah, BK obviously makes it so that they can't be damaged by summons or abilities. Sorry, just by abilities, which is nice, but 9 times out of 10, abilities will be breaking, not dealing damage. But that being said, having BK on the field when your opponent's on fire, having the likes of Zac, and Zac obviously deals 3k, but when you've got so many weeny little forwards, actually stopping them from being killed from that is very useful. So yeah, that's really good. Now, the change I made, which hasn't been reflected in here for some reason, I don't know why, obviously I must have not saved it, was that I took Sir out. But can you guess what I put back in? It's not a searcher. It's a water card, obviously. It's Kimari. So, this Kimari actually did so much work. So when Kimari enters the field, when he enters the field, choose one forward you control, place 1/1 so counter on it, and anything with a Ronso counter gains. If this forward is dealt damage by your opponent's summons or abilities, the damage becomes 0 instead. So obviously BK can make it so that things are ability proof, but Kimari can make it so it's both ability and summon proof in terms of damage. So actually using Kimari on your BK was quite funny, because now my opponent can't you know, they have to do an outright break, put him to the top of deck, something like that, not damage removal. So it made him a bit harder to kill, and it did so much work. Similarly, getting that on your Layla, getting it on your Faris, you know, these forwards that you want to be sticky, realistically. And on Faris especially, it's so good because of the fact she's got that moving ability as well. But yeah, let's move on from BK to Faris. So, obviously, makes all your pirates 8k, which is really, really good, because otherwise Vikings are tiny. However, you need to have Faris on the field, realistically, to be starting to push damage, which normally doesn't happen to mid to late game, so that kind of sucks. But like I said earlier, if you've got something to protecting Faris, like with Kimari, and then having that pay 0, choose one summon ability, choosing only Faris, choose another water forward you control, blah, 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 blah. Really, really good. What's also nice is the fact that you can choose something that's bigger than Faris. So let's say something like Kraken. You can then just shift it away from something that you otherwise want to keep on the field, like maybe some Vikings or Layla. Something that it was actually really useful to shift to, though, was the Warrior of Light. So obviously Warrior of Light searches standard units. That's pretty much all the Vikings. But also gives all your forwards plus 2k. If you have 4 or more standard units. Again, Vikings like to pump out other Vikings. Vikings beget Vikings. So it was really easy to get to that point. So you've now got Faris making all your Vikings 8k, and then you've got Warrior of Light adding plus 2k to that. Obviously, Warrior of Light himself only stays as an 8k, but everything else being potentially a 10k is so strong. And like I said earlier, using Faris' ability to shift an effect that would hit her to hit Warrior of Light, and then using Shield of Light, Warrior of Light's S, to make him a 12k is really, really good. Actually, a 13k, sorry, is again super strong. And then you've got something like Jed on the field, which then reduces damage, again, super effective. And Warrior of Light, yes, yeah, he did so much work. Kraken, like I said before, a Sopfo forward, but when it enters the field, draw a card, just as standard, that's perfectly fine. And then when Kraken enters the field, choose one forward. If you control 7 or more water characters, it loses 10,000 power till the end of the turn. Again, super easy to get to because it's Vikings, right? So yeah, Kraken, whilst I didn't play him very often, bearing in mind there's only one on the deck, whenever I did play him, I was kind of already in a winning position anyway. But still, minus 10k is pretty significant, and drawing a card was nice, but realistically, I didn't need him in the deck, to be honest with you. It was just a case of I wanted to be able to trigger Jed's ability more reliably, so I put it in the deck. But I probably could have, I say, put something else in. I don't really know what else I would have put in, because I've already got 3 BK, Jed counts himself, and then one other. So if I've only got BK and then Darkness Manifest, you know, that's it. So I wanted something else. So Kraken, I think, was a perfectly fine shout, and like I said, did do some work at the very least. Then you got Darkness Manifest, horrible card. Now you're not going to be able to use its ability to make it become cheaper, but having that consistent I'm dealing opponent damage to you every main phase start is really good. And when you can just keep on pumping up forwards to block your opponents and say like, look, ultimately I don't care, I'm drawing, I'm casting anima on your forwards that are problematic. Otherwise, yeah. And obviously when Darkness Manifest leaves the field, you get to choose a character and break it. Obviously Darkness Manifest can be blanked, which is a shame, and it did happen a couple of times, but if your opponent's having to invest that heavily in getting rid of him, actually I don't see it as that bad. It then stops being this constant aggression card and then starts being a bit of a tax card, which is, yeah, still perfectly fine with me. And then Leviathan, because it's Leviathan. What more is there to say? And that is my Maelstrom deck. Like I said earlier, it was a lot of fun. It functions very much on its own. It, you know, plays cards, it finds cards for you, but having something that was so basic and a little bit of spice with like the Jed and the Darkness Manifest was really, really fun to play. And coming up against the likes of Mono Fire and Mono Water and Seven Wall, yeah, it's just really, really fun. There was actually a decent amount of ice as well, and it nicely counteracts ice because obviously your opponent's making you discard, but you've got so many draw mechanics within the deck that you can generally replenish your index, and you've got a decent amount of recursion as well with your Leviathan, your Layla, and your Lena. So, you know, even if things are going to the break zone, hopefully you're able to still replay them onto the field. Anyway, this was my store celebration deck for Athena games, and it was a lot of fun. Didn't do particularly well, but like I said, I didn't want to do particularly well. I just wanted to play something different that could hold its own, and I think, to be honest with you, it did alright. Like I said, most games went to game 3, so yeah, I think it was alright. Anyway, thank you so much for watching, guys. Stay safe, be lucky, and I'll see you in the next video.